And this is actually on an ice runway. There's 1,000 meters of water directly below this plane. And getting into it and taking off, really, I don't mind flying. I love military planes. Getting in this plane and taking off, knowing that there was water underneath it and we were sitting on ice, freaked me out. Okay, it was unbelievable. Of course, it was after 6.5 weeks on the ship, and then 2 nights at McMurdo where nobody slept because there was a bar and nobody really wanted to sleep because we were all headed home. So that also probably didn't help the freaking out about this plane. This type of plane only comes in the best of seasons. They have smaller planes. I think they're LC-130s, the propeller planes. That flight takes about 13 hours. You head from here, you head to New Zealand to get home. This plane takes about 7 hours. So we got really lucky, and we made it out on the first plane of the year to get home. The U.S. runs one more base, and that's at the South Pole. That's the South Pole Station. That's this one right here, Amundsen Scott Base. To get to Amundsen Scott, you fly from New Zealand to McMurdo, again, 7 or 13-hour flight, and then you get on another airplane and you take it over the Transantarctic Mountains and you get to the South Pole Station. This is the one that became really famous a couple of years ago when their medical doctor developed breast cancer or found breast cancer when she's overwintering. And when you're overwintering there, you don't leave because planes can't land. It's pitch dark and the weather is really, really bad at that time of year. So she was stuck and actually had to perform her own biopsy while on station, and she had to actually, I believe, perform her own mastectomy while she was on station over that winter. And they got her out as soon as they could. They made every effort to get a plane in and get her out as soon as they could. So yeah, this is what it is. Primarily, there's very little biology that goes on at this station. It's mostly astronomy, simply because at this station they have some of the, I believe, and there's any astronomy people in the crowd, the best air to do this kind of thing. So this is what the new building they just built. So this is the station prior to, this is what the old buildings look like. They used to house people in these. Now they're parking trucks in those and caterpillars and things. This is the new U.S. Antarctic Program building. It actually will lift up out of the snow as the snow gets thicker and dries and melts. Yeah, it's on hydraulics. It's incredible. They put, that's what the best part about working for this program is that you get some of the best scientists in the world to come up with things like that. Okay. Now, it's one of the perks. However, the thing that we get to do the most, and part of what we do for my work and Averill's work, is we get to be on the ships. The U.S. runs 2 ships, the Gould and the Palmer, that typically berth in Punta Arenas, Chile. Okay, and I'll mention that in a little bit. These are the 2 of them, giant orange boats. I believe, what is it, about 300 feet long for the Gould, about 400 feet for the Palmer. The Gould will house 20 scientists and about the same number of crew. So at any time, if the ship is packed, and it's really kind of miserable if it's packed because people are stacked on top of each other, there's 40 people on board. Some you never see because they're working the engine room on the late shift, and they will walk by you in the hall, and you barely ever see them. The Gould will, the Palmer, the bigger of the 2 ships, will actually hold about 40 scientists and about 20 crew also. So it's much bigger, and it's a nicer ship in that, number one, it's bigger, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a second, but it also means if you want to hide from people for an hour one day and just clear your head, there are places to do that. Side by side, this is what the 2 ships, front to back. The Gould is in the front, the Palmer's in the back. They look about equal. The bridge on the Palmer is much nicer, much bigger. However, when you look at them side by side, there's a huge difference in these ships in terms of the side. This is actually at Palmer Station. This is one of the rare occasions that they've both been in dock there at Palmer together. They're great ships. The Gould is extremely outdated now, though, and the engineering on the Gould isn't the best. And by that I mean, if you look right here, these are its water wings. When they put the Gould in the water to do its sea trials, on its very first drop into the water, it listed 18 degrees. because the engine is on the side of the boat. And they didn't take that into account. So they had to build these water wings, or ballast wings. Thus, it sits lower in the water than you wanted it to. And crossing the Drake Passage, getting there, is much, much worse in this ship sometimes than this ship. And I say that with a grain of salt because our last 5 crossings, literally 1 back and forth crossings, were glass. All right, now that'll come up again in just a second. Okay, how do we get here? That's what we can do there. How do we actually get there? So the first thing you do is you get on a plane here in Mount Pleasant or MBS. You fly to Detroit, you fly to Atlanta, then you fly to Santiago, Chile. And in Santiago, the National Science Foundation pays a contractor, and his name is Jimmy. Jimmy meets you at your gate, walks you through customs. I've never seen it until this point. And this was my first trip down there, and Jimmy was there in 2000. Meets you at your gate, walks you through customs. Nobody checks your passport, none of that. Walks you directly into this office that the National Science Foundation pays for at the airport. And you realize, how did that just happen? Everybody Jimmy sees along the way, and turns out his wife is the chief of police in Santiago. He's shaking people's hands. And my advisor for my master's degree told me, watch his hand. He had $5 bills in every hand, every handshake. It's ridiculous how easy we get through customs as part of the U.S. science programs. Okay, you sit in so you take that overnight flight. You get there at about 9 in the morning or something like that. You sit there till about 4 in the afternoon until you get on your next flight to go south, crossing the Andes all the way south to Punta Arenas, Chile. Okay, so you get here in Santiago. You take your next plane to get to Punta Arenas. Once you get to Punta Arenas, you get to hang out in the city for about a day. You have to get your Antarctic gear. They issue you boots. They give you coats if you want them, fleeces, socks, sweatshirts, things like that. Once you've done the trip once or twice, you start to realize, nah, I want my own socks. I want my own sweatshirts, things like that. You get your rain gear for working on the deck, your waterproof bib overalls, your Helly Hansons, stuff that you would, stuff that you wear ice fishing. And then if you plan your timing right, you get to walk around this amazing town. Punta Arenas was a city that was built before the Panama Canal was made. So all the ships that came around South America went through this city. They'd cut through the Straits of Magellan, and they'd dock here for a day or two. And it was a hopping boom town for a very long time. When the Panama Canal was built in, I can't remember the year. I knew the year, and I had it memorized, and now I forgot. But when the Panama Canal was built, this city died off. And it became almost a ghost town. So my first trip there in 2000, the city was run down. It was depauperate. It was almost barren. These last 2 trips down there, my last 3 trips down there, it's reviving itself. It's amazing. It's becoming a tourist destination. Because if you go here, you can go up into the Andes. You can go see penguins. There are whale watching tours. They're building an industry of tourism in this city, and it's a really neat place. You can go there and have these amazing meals of Chilean conger eel and just some amazing food. If you're a foodie, the restaurants in this town are spectacular. You can go into the bar that Ernest Shackleton walked in after being stranded when his ship, the Endurance, was wrecked, and he came back here to help find a rescue crew. You can walk into the bar where he walked in the night when he walked in there and said, my men are trapped on Elephant Island, or my men are trapped, I need help. Nobody looked up. You can look up at the ceiling where he did. He pulled out his gun and he shot a hole in the ceiling. The hole's still there in that bar. And I got to sit and have a nice drink underneath that. It's one of those things, okay, this is history. You could look, I sat there the entire night and everybody's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, that's the bullet hole. At least that's how the story went. And there's a hole, so I'm going with that, and I'm sticking with it. In the middle of the town square in Punta Arenas is the statue of Magellan. Okay? This is Magellan. We were about to enter the Straits of Magellan, and it's tradition that on the native people on this statue, before you get on the ship to cross the Drake Passage to get to Antarctica, you have to rub the toe of the statue. If you get seasick like I do, you force everybody to rub that toe. Okay? It's actually really brassy. Some people actually kiss the toe, which is microbiologically really gross. Still. But that's the toe. So everybody has to rub the toe. All right. That's getting to the point where we're ready to take off. That's anticipation. That's 3 or 4 days of work right there. You get on the boat, you leave Punta Arenas, you go out the Straits of Magellan, you either go east or west. I've done both trips, and the pictures I'm going to show you are actually going west because it's actually a prettier trip because you get to go through the Andes rather than away from the Andes the whole time. Sorry, Avril. She got to go on the east route. But anyway, so then you start to head south. It's about a 5-day trip. Day 1, you get on the boat. Typically, what time did we leave? Did we leave sometime in the mid-morning, right? So you leave before lunch. They do a bed check at about 6 a.m., making sure everybody's on board. Most of the time, people have been out the night before, very, very late at the bars, because every U.S. vessel, you're not allowed to have alcohol on at all. No drinking, no nothing. And it's very, very strictly, it's one of those rules that everybody follows, and it's very strict. So everybody was out the night before. They do a bed check. Most people have to be woken up just to make sure that they're still breathing. But you leave about 9 or 10 in the morning, and you start heading south. Okay, great. You get some really scenic views for the first few hours. You get mountains. This is the southern tip of Chile. It's gorgeous. You can see whales in these things, in the straits. You can sometimes see Magellanic penguins, so the species of penguin, one of the warmer water species of penguin. This is actually the cross on the very southern piece of land that is landlocked to the continent of South America. There are some islands to follow, but that is as far as you can go on the continent itself. Okay? Great. So you see this. It's neat. Suddenly, land starts to go away. You start to lose the color green. Everything becomes these wind-swept, tiny little island-type strips of land. Then land goes away. Then you know that's after about day 1. Then you have about 4 more days. Okay? Seems okay, that's fine. Remember what I told you? Remember how I told you how much water goes through here? Sometimes you can get about 100, 110-foot seas in a 300-foot boat. I don't do well in boats. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I'd get on the boat tomorrow if I could, if the dean would let me. And I said, he wouldn't let me. But I get seasick. I know I get seasick. So somewhere about right here, I've started taking seasick medicine. Okay? Land's gone away. The waves can pick up. Because the winds can pick up. Because the currents can pick up. Then the waves can really pick up. Then the waves can really pick up. And by this point, if you're unlucky enough to have bad weather, and you know it's coming because we've seen the weather reports, you lay in your bed, and the reason your bed's so narrow is so that you can do this. You lock your elbows, and you just hope that you can fall asleep before it starts to get really bad. You can fly up out of your bed. You can drop. I mean, we didn't have any of that, though. Literally, I should be buying lottery tickets, how lucky we've been on our last few crossings. It can get really, really bad. This isn't one of our ships, but you can see how bad. There are cruise liner videos on YouTube if you're really interested in seeing that stuff of how nasty it can get and how lucky some people are that they've taken these pay for cruises to go to Antarctica, how some of these ships make it. Insane. You can walk down the hallway like this a lot. I've actually put my feet on the wall right here once. Just walking straight up, not jumping, none of that. Step, step here, step, step down. Just to see if I could. I was already sick as a dog, so why not just, and nobody got a picture of it, but yeah. And then you get there. After potentially 3 days of being very, very ill, and then you get there. And you realize why you did it. Okay? You do it for this. You do it so you can see things like this. This is the first land that we saw on the cruise with Avril. This is Peter the First Island. I believe it's one of the pictures that we have in the Baber room right now. I think I probably have a couple hundred pictures of this island. Additionally, about 2 seconds after this, I've got a bunch of pictures. There's a nice crab-eater seal that swims in right here. That was just gorgeous. And then you get to see the wildlife. I know there's people that wanted to see penguins, so you got to throw penguin pictures in.